John McMullen and Jody McDonald, a.k.a. Mac here on Birds 365, and we've got our Friday bud, Paul Domowitch, ready to jump in with us and talk about this matchup between the Eagles and the Giants, and can the Eagles stop the bleeding of this three-game losing streak? Damo, did you gain anything from Matt Patricia's first turn in front of the microphones in a while as the new John, what are we calling Matt Patricia? He's not the
play caller.
Yeah, the defensive play caller.
He had the pencil, by the way. I was right.
You were right on that one. Were there any words of wisdom coming from Coach Patricia for you, Mr. Domowitch?
Mele Kaliki Maka, guys.
There's words of wisdom for you. I like it.
Yeah.
Not really, no. He was wordy, which surprised me.
Very wordy.
I thought he would be Beckian, but he was not. But no.
He was very professorial. I was shocked. He was Jim Schwartz without the baseball analogies. I thought he was trying to filibuster to try to get through it, with two questions. But no, he stood there and he took it all. He was really good. He was really impressive. I was expecting more, Belichickian. That's good. That's what I was expecting. He was, but I don't know what he could do at this stage. What you can't change anything. You can't add personnel. They'll bring in Jack Leonard.
He mixed up a little bit of the coverage. What disappointed me, I mean, I didn't expect him to become a turn into Wink Martindale blitzwise, but two blitzes the entire game. That last drive, he rushes forward the entire drive. I mean, you have to go after Drew Lock at least once on one of those 3rd and 10s, and he doesn't. And they didn't put the pressure on him.
With these coordinators, all of them, all across the league, they'll dominate a whole game, and then they'll be in a position to put it away.
Yeah.
And then they play soft, and you see these things happens all over the league, not just the Eagles. You see it, and they go down and score and win the game. It's bizarre to me. Even Flores, who's the most aggressive guy in the NFL, he'll play that way for 3.5 quarters, and then he'll go, all right, I'm going to play coverage.
But John, you know this, and I'm pretty sure Damo will concur. Prevent defense has been in the National Football League for 50 years. That's not a 2023 occurrence. This has been going on in the league for 50 years. Teams getting everything in front, until it goes over your head and you end up losing the game. So that's not Eagles. That's not 2023. That's been in the NFL forever.
It happens all over the league. My part is they're more concerned. Tell me if you think this is true, Damo. They're more concerned about answering questions in the press conference than winning a football game. Because Jody's right. If you get beat over the top for an 80-yard touchdown, you look like the biggest moron in the world, and you got to go answer questions versus a slow death where you can at least say, well, look at Bradbury. They seem to be more concerned, literally, about answering questions. And yesterday's a perfect example of that. The Eagles hid Matt Patricia for the whole season. They didn't have to. He proved himself. He's a former head coach. He's answered questions before. He handled himself well. Boy, they're really concerned about, not losing in a certain way. Not just the Eagles, the entire NFL. Agree or disagree?
Oh, totally agree. And I think it's been an organizational flaw or characteristic going back several years. And I think it all emanates from Howie. And then he it relays it to his PR staff, who relays it to the coaches that, they just overemphasize their dealings with the media more so than their decisions sometimes, and it just baffles me. I mean,
a lot of power. We don't have that much power, Tom. But they give us astonishing level. Brandon Graham basically blamed us for getting Sean Desai fired. I'm like, we have tremendous power we yield. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, and the odd part there is blaming the media for Sean Desai. The media was spending the entire season asking for Brian Johnson's head. So, they gave the media a head. It just was a different one.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know who in the media actually said maybe the Eagles need to swap out their defense coordinator.
I don't know anybody.
I'd really like to know who that person was.
Yeah.
Is it a collective media or is it an individual media? I can tell you a group that started to think along that line called Eagle Nation, as judged by calls to WIP and varying other outlets. So I think Brandon's ire was kind of misguided. If you're going to say someone other than Nick Sirianni decided it was time to change the defensive coordinator, I'd say it was Eagle fans more than Eagle media, but that's just me. Maybe I'm a little defensive. Is that unfair of me, Dama?
It is not, Jody. I think that the players and coaches, not just here but everywhere, lump talk radio and the callers and the hosts into the media.
Yes. The media.
Yeah.
By the way, we have a meeting every Tuesday at the Chickies and Pizza Shop. We get together to create our narrative, our cabal. Damo, don't be late next Tuesday.
I'll try to be there on time this week.
You do that. All right. Now this is not a media thing. This is not a Philly Eagles Nation thing. This is a Jody McDonald thing. Does Quez Watkins have compromising pictures of Nick Sirianni? I do need to know the answer to that question. If I'm going to piss anybody off because I said this and I'm not flying the Eagle banner, and I point out the fact that I think the Eagles' third wide receiver position has become a joke. I'll apologize if anybody's offended, but I'll stand by it because I feel that way. What is it about Quez and Sirianni?
It's this organization's infatuation with speed. He can't do anything, but he can run fast. It's why they drafted Davion Taylor in 2020, I think. Turned out to be a complete waste of a third-round pick on a linebacker that didn't even know how to play football, but could run a 4.4 40. Same thing with Quez. They think just having him run down the field is going to create some problems for a defense. When you can blow him over with a feather, when he can't block, he can't run a bubble screen. What use is he? I've said this for years. Greg Ward is wasting away on their practice squad right now. They put him in the game. He's much more functional and useful to Jalen Hurts than Quez Watkins ever will be in his lifetime.
Yeah, and they don't even have to go to him. Oz has been making plays all year. They don't throw him the ball, but when he does, he catches it, and he catches it in the end zone. He's got as many touchdowns as Dallas Goedert, who is one of the big three. The offense runs through A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. But somehow, Oz, who can't get off the bench, has 2 touchdown passes, and Dallas Goedert only has 2. Somebody explain that to me, why that doesn't merit Olamide Zaccheaus being on the field more than he is.
Well, I think the bigger issue is, Quez was out for whatever it was, 4 or 5 weeks. And they couldn't get the ball to the third receiver with Julio Jones or Oz, whomever. My bigger issue, they don't have a third receiver of any competency.
Sure, yeah.
And that to me is the bigger issue. And maybe Greg Ward could help. It's amazing to me with so many great athletes, and we talked about it before the Eagles finally fixed the problem, when it was a bigger problem because it was 1 and 2, and they had to pay AJ. They had to draft Devontae at number 10. They had to pay AJ $100 million to fix that position. Carson broke the franchise record with no help from receivers for passing yards. It was astonishing that in this era, they couldn't get a receiver. Part of it was Alshon's injuries and his decline, but they couldn't get a receiver with 600 yards, Damo, until they finally said, all right, we got to keep doubling down until we fix this issue. But I think I bring that up because I think it speaks to their development. You see other teams, guys go down, big time receivers. They'll pluck somebody off the practice squad that can give them something.
Yeah.
Because one of the strengths, I always talk about the weaknesses of college football. One of the strengths now is receivers. There's like a boatload of them coming in every year because that's all they do in college. And the Eagles can't find a developmental prospect at the stinking receiver position. I think that's the bigger problem.
You're right. And I mean, and this is a team that has gone totally committed to the 11 personnel groupings, 3 wide receivers, almost 90% of the time now. And you don't have depth at that position. Makes no sense. I mean, if something happens to AJ Brown or Devontae Smith in these next 3 weeks, they're screwed.
That would be ugly.
Exactly.
Man. How about Britton Covey? He's having a great year as a punt returner. How about him as a slot receiver? He caught a lot of passes at Utah. I don't know if he can play receiver, but I guarantee he'd play receiver better than the guys they got out there. I don't know if he'll survive because of how small he is. But, yeah, I mean, Joseph Nada on the practice squad, he didn't impress me in training camp, didn't get a lot of separation, but could he be much worse? Or Devin Allen, talk about speed. Maybe he can clear out something.
Yeah, I mean, their answer to depth was signing Julio Jones, which 5 years ago would have been a fine thing to do.
That would have been great. Yeah, 5 years ago.
Now it's I mean, Julio doesn't. I mean, it's on E. I mean, the needle is on E there.
Real quick, sorry, Jody. To button up the thing about the receivers. Also, if you're going to be an RPO team, you got to be able to run a damn bubble screen. You got to be able to run, and I hate them, but you got to be able to run them, and you got to be able to run a rub routes. We're 3 years in, and this is Nick Sirianni's expertise.
Right.
I have a problem with that as well, Domo.
Yeah.
Even AJ and Devontae, you got to block. You got to be able to run a rub route. You got to be able. It seems they block when they're running rub routes, and they don't block when they're running bubble screens. It's amazing to me.
I mean, last week they ran 5 screens, gained 2 yards, total of 2 yards on those 5 screens, and 2 of them almost turned into near disasters.
Yeah.
When Jalen basically threw it before he realized, that the probably the best receiver there was a defender. So, and the rub routes, I mean, they've been the most effective thing to do against man-to-man defenses now. Bunch formations and using rub routes, and they're not very effective with it. And teams are beating them with it. I mean, you can go back to the playoffs last year in the Kansas City game.
Yeah,
but. That's there.
John almost on a weekly basis points out how the bubble screen is the ugliest play in football. And I try and tell him, John, it's because you watch the Eagles too much. It's not that the bubble screen is an ugly play. It's when the Eagles run a bubble screen, it's an ugly play. No. Other teams in the National Football League are making it work. And doing it just fine.
I know people are saying it's still ugly. It's an ugly play, but it can be a successful play. Yeah. I'm not. It has to be.
I think 49er fans are okay with bubble screens to Deebo Samuel.
I'm just saying,
turns a 2-yard pass into a 45-yard gain. I'm guessing they think that's pretty.
Yeah, well, of course, fans are just worried about winning. I get it. I'm saying from a purely aesthetic standpoint, it's an ugly play. Just
last year, their screen game was pretty good, including some of the bubbles. This year, I think part of the problem is the blocking has just been horrendous on a lot of those bubble screens. I mean, I don't know why you have. I mean, Devontae Smith's not going to block anybody. I mean,
he's a good blocker for a 166-pound guy.
That doesn't cut it. I know the point you're trying to make, John, but it doesn't cut it. I was going to say that's the one thing, because there were people out there going, "What the hell are the Eagles doing taking a 165-pound guy in the first round?" Maybe because he's a great wide receiver, and that's what he's playing. That's the position he's playing. Just look at the results. Stop looking at him. Look at the results. He actually does pay a price with his size in the blocking game. He's just not good at it. He just is incapable. I don't think it's lack of desire or anything else.
No, he
just
tries.
incapable.
He tries.
And he's taking a pounding too. You know, he's taking a pounding catching the ball.
Did not practice yesterday. I did. You should have mentioned that. He's got a knee injury, so we got to keep an eye on that as the week goes on. So yeah. Issues at wide receiver, which is interesting because you have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and we're not talking about them, but there's certain things. If you're going to run that offense, and by the way, it kills me, Damo, that everybody this week seems to have figured out this is a simple offense. You watched the show for 3 stinking years. I've been telling you how simple it is. And everybody's about, oh, it's very simple. Yes. And that's my point. It comes down to execution. And right now, they're not executing things like rub routes, things like bubble screens. These can be successful plays if you execute correctly. What do you think has happened during this 3-game losing streak offensively? We know the issues defensively. There's personnel issues. Yeah. Offensively, this should be a pretty damn good team.
Yeah. I mean, I think, A, they need to rely more on the run game. B, they've become too infatuated with the deep ball, which was pretty evident on Monday night with those 2 horrendous passes of Jalen's, and then a coach who says, "Well, we were looking, you know, possibly might have gotten."
Boy, that was the dumbest answer in the history of the world.
Yikes!
You need 15 yards to put the best field goal, one of the best field goal kickers in football, in position to tie the game and send it into overtime, and you throw a ball up for grabs, hoping for a pass interference, according to him. Boy. I mean, that you're right. It was the dumbest thing I've ever heard come out of a coach's mouth in a long time.
I tried to defend Nick over that, and I don't know why, because he should correct it. But I think what it was so disjointed. I think what he meant to say was, we're trying to give AJ a shot outside, and you know, you might get a PI. I think that's what but for some weird reason, he started with the PI.
That's
just, it's just,
yeah.
But for that, I would say, and Nick did mention, I asked him about that, what you just said, that sort of balancing line between taking shots and taking what's there. And Seattle was playing their 2 safeties in the parking lot for most of the game.
Yeah.
They were clearly trying to take away the big plays. And so I didn't ask it about Jalen because, you know, he's going to button up if you ask him about that. But he started to talk a little bit, and he said, well, there are things essentially built into every play. You know, if it's not there, you got to go to underneath, and you got to go to, in that case, the Kenny Gainwell. Everybody talks about Kenny, but they don't dump the ball off. At this stage, you know, they're not dumping the ball off. But he could have went to the second progression, whether that was the flat or over the middle. Although it looked like, I think it was Devontae.
Devontae was wide open underneath, right on the same exact pattern.
I don't. Was it Devontae was open?
Yes.
So he did say there's options. So I blame, that was a bad decision by the quarterback.
Yep.
I mean, you go up to the snap, Damo. The corner had a 12-yard cushion.
Yeah.
He didn't look off the safety, and he's still throwing it. That to me is a bad decision by the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Jalen clearly is not playing as well this season in a lot of aspects. And one, first and foremost with me, is the tunnel vision he tends to show with regard to that deep ball. I mean, like you said, people were open. Devontae was open on the first interception on a shallow cross.
Yeah. He was wide open. Yeah.
He's got people open, and he admitted yesterday he didn't see them.
He didn't see Gainwell. Well, Gainwell was on the other side of the field.
Right. I don't blame him for the Gainwell thing.
Yeah, I'm at the point where I've been saying that for 3 years too. They don't dump the ball off with Jalen Hurts. He's going to run if it gets to that point. So I kind of do put the Gainwell part of it aside because they're never going to get to that. But I mean, just the 12-yard cushion should alert you that, all right, maybe this isn't going to be there.
Yeah.
because they're clearly trying to limit the explosive play down the field because of what we just talked about, the whole league-wide mentality. Don't get beat over the top. And by the way, Seattle won the game on the same concept, giving Njigba a chance on the outside. They won the game doing the same thing. They just executed better.
Yeah.
All right. Then along those lines, Damo, James Bradbury play 100% of the snaps this weekend?
Not if I'm the coach, but I mean, I'd go with Ringo and Ricks. They're going to make mistakes. Now, I mean, I would give them these 3 games to make their mistakes and get them ready for the playoffs, because right now I have zero trust in Bradbury's ability to get it done out there. And I don't know what's going on with Darius Slay and his decision to get surgery when he did. So yeah, I'd go with Ringo and Ricks.
That's bold. And Bradbury is playing poorly. I guess I would play it safe there and stick with Bradbury, at least, especially with what's upcoming. I think you want to gain confidence as you get to the playoffs, and they have an opportunity because of the schedule.
You don't think Wan'Dale Robinson can light him up this week, John?
Well, anybody can light him up, but I think it's a chance to rebuild some of the confidence that maybe has been lost. But before you came on, you might have heard us talking about your most interesting stat to me this week, JAKIBsports.com. Make sure you go read Damo's stat pack, because I knew they were close, but I didn't think they're significantly ahead in total pressures when rushing the quarterback than last year's 70 sack team, 297 to 271. It's interesting to me from this perspective. The back seven is so poor compared to last year's back seven.
Yeah.
That I think, and I was saying to Jody, I think the defensive front has to dominate more than they dominated last year. And they dominated about the same over a large sample size, but it's not showing up because of the deficiencies on the back end. You buying or selling what I'm saying there?
No, I buy. I think to a large degree, that's their problem. That's why they're not getting there. I think there's a few other contributing factors. I mean, lack of depth at edge rusher right now. Sweat's playing way too many snaps, even though he's still playing pretty good. Carter and Jordan Davis have kind of disappeared a lot of the times. I don't know if they're just getting tired inside. I mean,
they're not used to playing this much.
Yeah. I mean, they're relying way too much on Fletcher Cox. I mean, Cox was like, should we sign him or not sign him? They bring him back, and now he's like,
good signing, man. That's one of Howie's best decisions, man.
Yeah,
he's having a good year.
If they didn't have him, they'd really be in trouble. So, yeah. I mean, all you got to do is look at the time quarterbacks, the speed that they're getting the ball out. I mean, clearly they're able to find receivers pretty quickly before these guys get there. And that's the blame. You're blaming that on the linebackers and the DBs.
Agreed on the DBs, the linebackers. Who's going to play linebacker for the Eagles this week? Nicholas Morrow missed practice yesterday. They haven't gotten Zach Cunningham back yet. Now, those might be your 2 starting linebackers by Monday, because we still got a couple days to go. But assuming neither one of those guys are good to go, you going to line up and play some linebacker for the Eagles on Monday?
Well, it looked like they put Sidney Brown at linebacker last week.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much so.
And we saw what happened. He missed,
75 tackles.
I mean, that's another organizational mistake in devaluing that position to the degree that they have. And then, drafting Nakobe Dean and he can't stay healthy. So,
injuries. By the way, Avonte Maddox could be back this week. So we talked about the back. That would be huge, because that would have Avonte's one of the best slot corners in the NFL. People criticize, and he's got durability issues, no question about it. But he's also, I don't think people realize, he's great in run support, comparatively speaking, to most nickel corners. He's their best blitzer from the edge. It brings the blitz back in the equation. They have nobody to do it. This could really help them if he's able to get out there. Now, he hasn't played since week 2, so you would think there would be a ramp-up period. But boy, I mean, that could have a domino effect that could really improve this defense down the stretch.
Yeah, and it gives you a little bit of flexibility with regard to, I mean, Roby hasn't played terribly. It gives you a little flexibility as far as using him and Maddox together in some packages, and
he can play outside. Roby played outside a lot before he became a slot corner, so that could help you there as well, or at least give you a little bit more depth. Yeah, it could be. You typically don't think of slot corners having that kind of impact on the defense, but for this defense, for this team, and that player, and all he can do, that might be Sean Desai might be sitting there thinking, man, if I could have lasted one more week, got Avonte back.
Yeah, and you mentioned his ability to play the run. I mean, their run defense is horrible right now, and having Avonte would help.
Damo, the Eagles have owned the Giants of late. When I say of late, it actually goes back like a decade. They've won 16 of the last 19, 16 and 3 over the last 19 games against the Giants. That's saying plenty. And of course, 3 for 3 last year, with them all being of relative ease. Well, they'd have to work in that last regular season game when they got Jalen back from the injury. That was the one I thought they're going to beat the Giants by 4 touchdowns. They beat them in their house by 4 touchdowns. They beat them in the playoffs by 4 touchdowns. But they didn't do it the last game of the season. They won, and that's the most important thing. Does that matter at all coming into this game? Is there a mental advantage to the Eagles because they beat them 3 times last year and beat them like a drum for a while? Teams change. It's stable second year. It's different players on both teams. Does the fact that the Eagles have owned the Giants mean anything in Monday's matchup?
Matters none, none whatsoever. I mean, this is a team that's reeling right now. I don't even know if they know who they're playing this week. They just they need to win badly. And you know, 5 weeks ago, if you would have looked at these last 3 games and said there's a chance they're going to lose 1 or maybe even 2 of them, people would have laughed at you. You know, now, I mean, they're capable of losing to anybody on any given day.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they're coming off. It's amazing to me how quickly it's unraveled. And part of that, I think, is self-inflicted. Not, you know, on the field, the issues are real. Off the field, the issues are, I believe, self-created, self-inflicted. They panicked. They didn't believe in their 10-1 record. It's clear in hindsight. Maybe they shouldn't have. Maybe that is the case. But boy, I mean, you've heard the narrative, and you know, by the way, that comes from obviously people do the research, but Cam Cameron and Baltimore, when John Harbaugh fired him late in the season for Jim Caldwell, they struggled, but they, you know, got their bearings and went on to win the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, you can come up with one occasion in the Super Bowl era. Great. You can't come up with one. You know, the Ravens fired Cam Cameron. They didn't Freaky Friday it and swap positions. They didn't. All right, you go be the analyst, and you're going to be the defensive play call. This is dysfunction live in living color, Damo. Who do you blame for this?
Well, I mean, this move, it's like Howie back in 2014 when they put him in charge of desks and chairs rather than fire him, and then he ends up coming back as the GM.
I hope Sean got a raise like Howie did, at least to get demoted. I hope they kicked him a couple extra bucks.
Maybe they threw in a trip to Hawaii after the season. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, this came from upstairs.
Yeah, it's self-inflicted.
Along those lines, who do you think is going to be the Eagles' defensive coordinator? Not this week. We know it's still Sean Desai in name only. in name and in responsibility. Who's going to be the Eagles defensive coordinator in 2024?
Probably somebody that's not around here right now. I would assume they'll go out and get somebody. I mean, I cannot believe that, that Nick Sirianni is going to turn over the defense to Matt Patricia next year. So I would say someone else out there.
If they make a run, you never know, Domo.
Yeah.
Maybe the pencil is here long term. I think it's whomever Howie wants. I think we are at that stage. We already lived it with Doug Peterson. I think we're at that stage where it's like, all right, Nick, it's your offense. By no means am I saying Nick's going to get fired or walk away, but he's going to say, it's your offense. Do what you want for now. Now, if that keeps going in a negative direction, we're going to get the Press Taylors and Mike Rose of the world. But defensively, it's going to be like, we're going to pick the guy, and you don't worry about it. That's how I think it's going to go. Any disagreement with that?
No, unfortunately.
That's not a good.
I mean, that was the beginning of the end of the Doug Peterson era.
Yes, it was.
When the GM and owners started saying, "We'll do this. We'll handle that."
Damo, how much faith do you have that Jalen Hurts turns it around, has an above average? I won't talk about MVP level game, but surely not as bad as he was the other night against Seattle. Mix in whatever you think he can and or the Eagles need him to do with his legs. If you got an A+ to an F grade and you were looking into the crystal ball, what kind of grade do you think you're going to give Jalen Hurts after the game against a Giant defense that's average at best? They're relatively healthy. They've got a couple injury issues, but it's not like they're devastated. The Giants defense is what it is, which is nothing special. What kind of performance you're looking for Jalen on Monday?
I'm going to be an optimist here. I mean, I think he's going to have a good game. I think he's going to turn it around. He realizes, Jalen's good at realizing what he's not done right. He's got some shortcomings, but I think he's going to have a solid game this week. I'd give him a B+ coming out of the Giants game.
If he plays a B+ game, is an Eagle victory a lock?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
would agree.
Assuming they don't turn the ball over elsewhere 4 times or on, the Giants convert 15 of 16 third downs. So
that's not impossible with the way this team plays defense on third down. Don't throw that out as a possibility.
Wow, that's an interesting. That's a battle to watch. The 31st ranked third down offense against the 32nd ranked third down defense. That is, you talk about a battle of heavyweights. Somebody's got to win that. Somebody's going to win that battle. The Giants are 31st in total offense, 32nd in passing offense, 31st in points per game, 31st in third down offense, 30th in red zone offense. If this defense can't at least have a reputable performance against this offense, it don't look good moving forward, because this is as easy as you're going to get in the NFL, unless you're going to college and you're going to play an FBS team or FCS. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this is the week to gain some semblance of confidence back, and that might help you going forward.
Yeah. All right, Damo, I've got pen and I've got paper, and I'm going to write down Johnny Mac's pick when he gives it to me later. I'm going to make my pick, but we need to start with the Paul Domowitch prediction for Eagles and Giants on Christmas Day. What do you got for a final score?
27-17 Eagles.
Yeah, I like it. 17. That defense, Matt Patricia defense. And mark my words, people will get excited by that. They'll say, oh, they gave up 17 points. Never look at the context. Never look at the opponent. Never. It's always.
Yeah, the defense looked good until the final 2 minutes of the game the other day.
Yes.
When they went 98 yards, stuck in the end zone, won the game. All of a sudden, the defense was still a calamity.
Yes.
It can swap on a dime. Damo, great stuff as always. Like John said, check out JAKIBsports.com. Damo puts up a great stat package and posting every single Friday leading into the Eagles game, and he jumps on here with us on Birds 365.
At P. Damo on Twitter, and he's going to be at the Media Cabal Luncheon, where we all get together and we puppeteer everything.
A lot of fries down there, chickies and pizza. And oh, by the way, Damo, I want an ugly Christmas sweater. I was kind of hoping this week. You stayed the course. You are Mr. Hawaiian. I give you credit for that. But if you ever going to vary, I thought maybe we'd get an ugly Christmas sweater this week.
I don't have an ugly Christmas sweater. Do you have it? Yeah,
no.
I don't have one.
Your wife is neither one of your wives has ever bought you an ugly Christmas sweater.
Not yet.
That's just
my daughters have some ugly Christmas sweaters, but I don't.
You can't borrow one of those. You're a little bigger than your daughters, huh? Okay. All right, Dom, always a pleasure. Thanks, brother. We'll talk to you next Friday.
Bailey, guys.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, he's
there we go.
Playing on us again.
Yes.
Well, Domowitch here with us on Birds 365. All right, quickie timeout. A couple things I want to touch on with John around the league stuff. One thing the Eagles will not have to worry about. You need a Jody McDonald prediction. I'm not going to give you a prediction on the game yet. I will predict that the Eagles will not lose one of their coordinators during this offseason. Some people thought